Hi guys, thank you for being here today. Today we are going to talk about the Shiloh Temple. I was very excited to learn about this because this is actually a cult that happened in Maine as well. It's another Maine story, and so I wanted to dig a little deeper and learn a little bit more about it. So let's get into it. So the Shiloh Temple, was also known as the Shiloh Chapel, is located in Durham, Maine. It was established by Sanford, who was a controversial religious leader, and he was the central hub for his movement known as the Kingdom. Frank Sanford was born on October 2nd, 1862 in Boningham, Maine. He was a charismatic and controversial religious leader who founded the Kingdom and the Shiloh Temple in Durham, Maine. He was a preacher who believed that he had a divine mission to establish God's kingdom on earth. His early life was marked by a strong religious upbringing, which led him to attend Bates College and Cobb Divinity School. He became a Baptist minister, but his radical views soon set him apart from mainstream Christianity. Influenced by the holiness movement, Sanford began to preach about the imminent return of Jesus Christ and the necessity of a pure, devout community to welcome his return. In 1896, Sanford established the Shiloh community in Durham, Maine. He built the Shiloh Temple, which was a large, multi-purpose building that served as the headquarters for his religious group. The community lived under strict communal living conditions with rigid religious observances. Sanford declared himself the, quote, prophet Elijah and also, quote, apostle, claiming to receive direct relations from God. Sanford's leadership style was authoritarian, and he enforced severe discipline, including fasting and rigorous spiritual practices. He promoted faith healing and discouraged medical treatment, believing that faith alone could cure illnesses. This belief led to several tragic deaths within the community, which attracted public scrutiny and legal troubles. Sanford founded the commune in 1896 with the intent of creating a self-sufficient, Bible-based community. The temple itself was completed in 1897 and became a focal point for its followers, who were called the Shilohites. Shilohites, I think that's how I say it. The complex included living quarters, schools, and a variety of facilities to support the community. The Shiloh Temple and Sanford's movement were often subjects of controversy. Sanford's strict teachings, which included faith healing and the belief that the end of times were near, attracted criticism and legal issues. The Shiloh Temple was the site of various forms of abuse and extreme practices, largely stemming from Sanford's authoritarian control and radical religious beliefs. Sanford's strong belief in faith healing led to the refusal of medical treatment for his followers. Many illnesses and conditions that could have been treated medically were not. He basically would just pray and fast in hopes that it would heal them. This neglect resulted in numerous preventable deaths, most notably during a missionary voyage on the yacht, the Coronet, I think that's how you say it, where 6 followers died. Followers were often subjected to prolonged periods of fasting and other physical deprivations as part of their spiritual discipline. These practices sometimes led to severe malnutrition or other health issues. Sanford believed that such hardships were necessary for spiritual purification and readiness for Christ's return. He lived under strict, rigid rules imposed by Sanford. Followers were constantly reminded of their sinful nature and the imminent end times, which created a climate of fear and psychological pressure. Sanford's authoritarian leadership style allowed little room for personal freedom or dissent. Disobedience or failure to adhere to Sanford's strict codes resulted in harsh punishments. These could include public shaming, isolation, or other severe disciplinary actions. The fear of such punishments helps maintain such a strict control over the community. Children in the Shiloh community were also subjected to these harsh conditions. They were often denied proper medical care and were expected to participate in the same rigorous spiritual world, which limited their development and opportunities. Sanford followers were encouraged to cut ties with their family and friends outside of the community, which led to social isolation. This made it difficult for members to leave or to seek help, because their entire support system was within the Shiloh Temple. The combination of these factors created an environment of control and suffering, with Sanford's absolute authority at the center. His actions led to significant criticism and legal action, culminating in his conviction for manslaughter in 1911. Despite the controversies and hardships, some followers remained loyal, which continuing to uphold his teachings even after his imprisonment and death. So one of the biggest controversies that Frank Sanford did was he decided to sail the world, and that was driven by his intense religious convictions and his belief in the divine mission. So Sanford believed that he was called by God to spread the Christian gospel worldwide. He saw the voyages as a means to reach different parts of the world and proclaim his religious message. Sanford viewed himself as a modern-day prophet with a special role in preparing for the second coming of Christ. He thought that his missionary work was a critical part of this preparation, and that he was directly fulfilling biblical prophecy. These were also a way for Sanford to demonstrate and test the faith of his followers. By undertaking these journeys and relying on divine provision, he sought to prove the power of faith and the truth of his teachings. Sailing around, Sanford was able to isolate his followers from outside influences, and he maintained a strict control over their lives. This isolation helped reinforce his authority and the communal nature of his movement. Sanford often engaged in symbolic acts that he believed had spiritual significance. So sailing around the world was seen as a grand gesture that symbolized his commitment to his religious mission and his willingness to go to great lengths to fulfill it. However, these voyages were fraught with danger and hardship. The most infamous of these was the 1910 to 1911 voyage on the yacht Coronet. Remember that we were just talking about? This resulted in the death of 6 followers from scurvy and other conditions due to inadequate nutrition and medical care. This tragic outcome led to Sanford's conviction for manslaughter and imprisonment, and it highlighted the extreme and often reckless nature of his missions. So there were several deaths associated with the Shiloh Temple under the leadership of Frank Sanford. The deaths were primarily due to the community's strict adherence to faith healing and the refusal of medical treatment, which Sanford promoted as a core tenet of his beliefs. Many followers who fell ill were denied conventional medical care and were instead subjected to prayer and fasting. This resulted in preventable deaths from illness that could have been treated with proper medical attention. The severe fasting and physical deprivations imposed on the community also contributed to health complications and deaths. Followers were often subjected to extreme conditions in the name of spiritual purification, which weakened their bodies and made them susceptible to various ailments. The combination of these factors created a perilous environment at the Shiloh Temple, leading to multiple deaths and significant suffering among its members. These tragedies ultimately brought public attention and legal consequences to Sanford and his movement. In 1911, he was convicted of manslaughter due to the deaths of the 6 of his followers during a mission voyage on the Coronet. These deaths were attributed to scurvy, like we said earlier, and other conditions, that happened or that resulted from the lack of nutrition and medical care. Sanford was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and served his time at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. His conviction and imprisonment marked a significant turning point in his controversial religious movement. Despite his incarceration, a core group of his followers contributed to uphold his teachings and maintain the community he had established at the Shiloh Temple. Sanford was released after serving his sentence, but he was never able to fully restore the prominence of his movement. Today, the Shiloh Temple, also known as the Shiloh Chapel, serves as a historic site in Durham, Maine. While it no longer functions as the headquarters of Frank Sanford's religious movement, it has been repurposed for various community activities and preserved as a part of local heritage. The site includes the main chapel building and several other structures that were part of the original Shiloh community. The Shiloh Chapel is often used for religious services, weddings, and other community events. It is also a point of interest for those studying the history of religious movements in the United States, particularly those with utopian and apocalyptic elements. The preservation of the site allows visitors to learn about the history and legacy of Frank Sanford and his followers, as well as the broader context of the early 20th century religious movements. Efforts to maintain and restore the building have helped ensure the Shiloh Temple remains an important historical and cultural landmark in Maine. The site serves as a reminder of the complex and often controversial history of Sanford's movement and the impact it had on its followers and the surrounding community. That is the Shiloh Temple. Definitely interesting to learn about it because it was another cult that happened, in New England, particularly in Maine, which is where I'm from. So I always like to learn about the history of Maine. So this was definitely interesting. I didn't see any documentaries about this. I'm sure there are, but I didn't really do like a ton of digging for if there are any out there. I'm sure there's some somewhere, but I mostly just had to do regular research on the internet. So yeah, that was the Shiloh Temple. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you want me to talk about, if there's a specific cult or anything like that. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay safe out there, friends. Bye.